as you know, we are discussing content and sequencing and their associated principles. So we'll continue with principle 5 and 6. So just for clarification, sort of, your general awareness, I mean, these principles are actually the subjective view of Nation and McAllister in their book, Language Curriculum Design. So we don't necessarily have to, rely on these principles. Rather, we can devise our own principles. So the whole point here is just to think out of the black box. What I mean to say, to think out of the method concept, and while analyzing a curriculum or designing a curriculum, we can draw insights from these principles. Right. Let's start with 5 principle. Okay. A language course should progressively cover useful language items, skills and strategies. So it's been sort of classified as keep moving forward. Okay. So the key information here is the progressiveness of the course. It should be somewhat dynamic, interesting, and which could be useful. And language items, for example, the skills and strategies which have their practical usage, right? So let's look at this explanation. For example, the practical usability can better be understood if a course has its clear, explicit goals. Okay. Do you remember while learning English language at grade, for example, 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th or 12th, have you ever observed your teacher giving you explicit description of the goals of a specific lesson? Okay, so for example, I remember when we were taught English, for example, intermediate level. So we started with a short story, His First Flight. So for example, it was sort of a grammar translation method, and the teacher was sort of, not giving any explicit goal of the course. So the whole notion, the whole point here is just to ensure the learners, when the learners they know the principle, the goals of the course, that can better facilitate learning, right? So we've got example here, Cambridge English course, which you can Google out yourself, and it contains some interesting examples how to give explicit goals. Okay. So if, for example, the whole point here in principle 5 is if a course has, explicit, clearly stated goals, it will naturally fit in with the overall plan of the curriculum. So it's sort of a, platform for effective language teaching. So we better start with giving clear instructions to our learners. What's the goal of a course? For example, if you want to teach compare and contrast the rhetorical device, okay? So the tasks, for example, revolves around, the dog and the cat, okay? So you want to teach the element of comparison and contrast through comparing and contrasting cats and dogs' characteristics. So it's better to clearly tell the learners the goals of the task. Okay, tell them we are going to do comparison and contrast, and that's the task. So our discussion will. So in this way, the learners will be much more involved. Okay, principle 6 is all about teachability, the teaching strategies. Right, the teaching of language items should take account of the most favorable sequencing of these items, and should take account of when the learners are most ready to learn. Okay, so it's all about becoming very much thoughtful while we are teaching the language course. We should look at learners' preferences when they are most ready. So, for example, this sort of sequence is very much key in second language acquisition. I've got example for you here, which is, this sentence here, when will John arrive? So, when will John arrive has a special particular sequence. So, we should, the SLA, second language acquisition, lays emphasis on, sort of natural order subject verb object sequence. Okay, so instead of teaching students John arrive when, so it could be quite funny. So we better start with or putting the lexical items in an appropriate sequence. So we might teach, will John come, right? So these are, the whole point here is like sequencing the items is an important element of teacher pedagogy. So as being language teacher, we should be aware of teaching principle of sequencing.